Well, good morning. I want to read from Isaiah, the Christmas season. This month we're talking about hope and the importance that hope plays in all of our lives. And hope is essentially this underlying belief that you have, that you hold about your future. So every person here, everyone with us online, wherever you are, you think something about your future. There's something that you think about it. You think it's good, you think it's not sure, you think it's terrible. The thing you think about your future can and often does fluctuate. But what you think about your future, in so many ways, it starts to define you as a person. If you don't believe that you have a good future, just think about what that does to you. Also, some of us don't realize that our thoughts about our future have become so secondary to us, and they've affected us so much, we don't realize how much our thinking about our future drives the daily activities of our life. If a person believes their future is good, it has a tremendous effect on the way they live their life today. And on the contrary, if a person has little faith in their future, it has devastating consequences to them. Subtracting hope from somebody's life has a devastating effect on that person, and often the ripple effect is this: because they don't feel good about their future, in extreme cases, they make life difficult for people around them. In very extreme cases, this is the seed of some of the greatest tragedies that we witness. And it starts because either you have hope or you don't have hope. A lot of people have irresponsibly said, it doesn't really matter if you have hope. I can't think of anything more irresponsible, because when a person feels like they have hope, it's going to trigger all sorts of positive emotions and actions in their life. But if a person gives up hope, it's a cascade into darkness. Isaiah chapter 8 says, "Then they will look toward the earth and see only distress and darkness and fearful gloom, and they will be thrust into outer darkness." This is the last verse before the famous chapter that you heard read here today from Isaiah 9 that says this: the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. They have hope. And it goes on to say, "For unto us a child is born, a son is given. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." What do you think about your future? Some people think they've made so many mistakes that they've pretty much done their future in. Some people believe that so much time has gone by, or they've entered a certain stage of life, that the good days are behind them. I don't know about you. I'm not as young as I used to be. It takes a couple more minutes to get everything going in the morning for me. Anybody? Just kind of, not one cup of coffee is going to do it for me anymore. You got to get things going. But I've had conversations with people, and they don't believe good things about their future. Now, in 1 Corinthians 15, the scripture says this: if we have hope only for this life, we are to be pitied more than all men. Paul writes a really interesting phrase there. He's like, if this is it, everybody's got a clock somewhere. Everybody's got a calendar somewhere. And if you do the math, and this is the end game right here, 85 and out, 80 and out, 90 and out, my grandma's case, 100, then everybody does the math. Have you seen the Seinfeld episode? Anybody? Seinfeld? Am I too old? Where George Costanza, he's sitting there talking, and he decides he's going to go visit elderly people. That's what he's going to do, is his community service to the world. Could you imagine getting a visit from George Costanza? And he's sitting there talking to this elderly man, and he's like, but you're 85. How can you be happy about anything? You're about to die. You know? And he just goes on and on. He's trying to infuse this guy with hopelessness. You know, he's like, it's over, man. It's over. You think about it. If you bought this scenario, it would just be closer and closer towards depression. If that's it. I don't know if you've ever read in Philippians chapter 1 where Paul talks about nearing the end of his life. He knows it's there. And Paul says this. He said, I'm torn. Get this. This is why I want to talk about God save us from shallow thinking. Paul says, I'm torn. I don't know if I want to stay here and do the work that God has for me to do, or to depart and be with Christ, which is better than the alternative. No, you haven't read that one. Better by far. Now, let's be honest. I mean, most of us, like me growing up, I thought I was taught about heaven, and basically the version I got was like, it'll do. Oh, don't act churchy to me. You were in 7th grade and excited about floating on clouds, and no, that was not exciting. But I don't think we really painted a good picture for that generation. The Apostle Paul said, in his vision, he'd been carried to the 7th heaven, and his assessment of it was, it's better by far. Now, that's really hard for you and I to describe or explain, because most of us haven't tasted or touched or seen. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard. It's never entered what God has in store for those that love him. Is it possible that there's something coming that is so beyond your imagination? Is it? This is worth just a minute of thinking about. Now, I've transgressed past what we call this life, and I've touched on what we'll call the life that is to come. The passageway there is death, just so you know. All right? That's the doorway. But either you enter that doorway and it's nothingness, it's misery, it's game over, you don't know anything, or God has something unbelievably in store for you. But when I talk about hope, I want to be clear about this. I'm not talking about only the hope that's past that doorway, although I am talking about that. I'm talking about in this life and the life that is to come. So therefore, this is the great, there is never a situation where you ever in your life need to be without hope. There's not a moment in time in your life that you ever need to feel hopeless. What I want to do in a few minutes today is to try to help you fuel your life with hope. How do I build hope in my life? And there's a few things I think that are very essential. The first thing that you have to do is you have to see better. Because what happens to a lot of people is they focus on the the short term. They focus on the things that are immediately around them. They focus on some shortcoming or some news they got from their boss or some news they got from a doctor. And that's short term. But what does God have in store for you? What does God have ready for you? That's a game changer. Now, I'm going to share the scriptures with you, but for the cynic in the back row or whoever you are that says, I'm so tired of this hope message, that's just a bunch of hype. Let me just share this with you. Do you know scientific research has shown that if you are hopeful about your future, your brain's going to work better? Science just says, if you're hopeful about your future, your brain's going to work better. So just for the sake of your brain, not to mention your family and everyone else, put some hope in your life. Literally, it says when you have hope in your future, the connectors in your brain that work towards anxiety, they dampen. I believe tomorrow is going to be better. Therefore, my brain starts to operate better. Not to mention, we like you a lot more. Isn't this true? How do you have more hope? You have to see what you didn't see before. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, it says this: faith is being sure of what we hope for. It's like, it's going to happen. About what we do not, what? What we don't see. This is so critical. You're going to, if you, all right, some of you are here to see your grandkids. Take a picture. I get that, and you're ready to go. So that's fine. Everybody's here for a different reason, and that's fine. That is fine. I took some pictures myself. But listen, they're not sharing this out there. It's not being shared to you that you need to look at things that you can't see. So, Chris, I don't even understand that. Well, that's what faith is. That's what the spiritual life is about. Is like there's more that's going on than you can see with this. And the reason that a lot of people don't have hope is because they only use these eyes. That's why they haven't hope. And they haven't been trained. They haven't been trained to see what cannot be seen. I have hope for what I can't see. I can't see that. Crazy now, speaking of science, now science is like teaching us that this thing here, it's actually more not here than here. I mean, just do some, subatomic math and, whoa. So I'm actually looking at something that isn't here, so that doesn't make it so crazy that I can see something that I can't see. There's a lot more going on here, my friend. There's a lot more going on. And when people enter the spiritual realm, they start to see things that they didn't normally see before. Like in 2 Kings, you know the story of Elisha, and the Syrian king was after the Israelites, and so Elisha was in tune. He was God's prophet, and he was in tune with God. So basically, the Syrian king would come over here to block them, and he would talk about it with his advisors, and Elisha would just get the inside track. And so he would tell the Israelite king, go to the other side of the mountain. And then they would move to this side, and the Assyrian king got so frustrated. He's like, what's going on? He calls his cabinet. True story. He calls his cabinet right there. He goes, someone is leaking. And it got real quiet, and they all go, no, it's not us. We're not telling them where you're going. It's that prophet Elisha. That prophet Elisha, he's telling them stuff that you're talking about in your bedroom. And he says, oh, we're going to go get this Elisha then. Where is he? And he said, he's in the city of Dothan. And so they go surround the city of Dothan. This is the Syrian king is like, we're going to deal with this guy. And Elisha's servant gets up early in the morning and he looks out and he goes, whoa. And around him, he can see the entire Syrian army surrounding his camp. And he says to Elisha, we got trouble. And Elisha said, what's wrong? He says, we're surrounded. And get this. Elisha gets up. Elisha's a prophet, a seer, they called them. Seers, that's a good term. He gets up and he looks around. He goes, no, there's more with us than with them. The servant's looking at him. What's going on? Elisha can see things he can't see. He just can see things that this guy can't see. Do you know when your life will take the most amazing turn is when you choose to plug into what God can see for your life. And he prays for the servant's eyes to be open. And when his eyes are open, he can see on the mountains armies and chariots of fire surrounding that army. I mean, you ever seen in the movies, like when the hero of the story gets surrounded by a bunch of bad guys and you're like, oh no, they're going to get him. And then all of a sudden, his team surrounds that team. They're seeing at one level and then they're seeing at another level. And I just have to be honest with you. And God bless you if you have a good, whatever, American education and you've got a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD. God bless you. But they just don't teach this. They just don't teach this. It stops right here. This is it, right here. But there's more than you can see. And actually, and speaking of education and science, here's the funny thing. The real scientists, like the guys that really dig deep, what they get to is mystery. They get to, I don't know, they get to black holes, and they get to these subatomic levels, and they're doing these crazy things, and they get all the way back to, they don't use the word God. Mystery, more than I can see or comprehend. I mean, you think about it. Here's the option. Here's the other option. It's all hopeless. This whole thing is just hopeless, you know. Huh? Truthfully, that doesn't really resonate with you. Right here, it's like, that doesn't feel right. Hope is a driving force in your life. It's a driving force in a successful family. Hope, let me say it, is a driving force in a successful enterprise or business because people have a belief that tomorrow is going to be better. What a thing to drive you forward if you know. You have to see what you have not at first been trained to see. Now here's the second thing. Do a little something to help your hope. So, let's start here. Have we all done something to screw up our future at some point in our life? Come on. This is my team over here. I messed that up. I could have. Is it right? See, now, so then you would think, well, I don't have any hope. But then that's where we have to introduce the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? Where he comes to not only to forgive our sins, but to give us hope even though. So there's the hope of that. And I need to add this. We need to partner. If you wake up every morning and do nothing for your future, there's probably a reason you don't have a lot of hope in your future. So you can ask God about this, how he sorts all that out when you get there. Like, I sat there and did nothing my whole life, and I wondered why I was hopeless. I thought you were the one that was supposed to fix my future. Okay, I don't understand the mystery of God to that degree. I really don't. But what I can say is this. There's something you can do. Yes, God can turn it around, and you need to plug into God. That's the whole thing we've been talking about. And God forgives. And all of us have done things to make a mess of our future. And still, God can get us on the right track. But you got to do something at some point in your life to aid your hope. In other words, even if it's small. I see this happen a lot of times where people, they make a bunch of mistakes, and the truth is, a lot of times when we make mistakes, we compound our mistakes. Have you ever done this? I made one mistake, and then I got into like a financial trouble, and then I made 6 more dummy ones on top of it because I was already in the wrong head, going there, okay, or relationship or whatever, it doesn't matter. And so then we start to get out of a sense of hope. And what you have to do in that case is you have to arrest the situation and say, I'm going to do one right thing for myself and my future today. Are you with me? All right, let's just say you lost control of your diet. And you're like, wow, screw it. Give me some chips. Are you with me? Come on, we've all been there. It's like, come on. You know what I'm talking about. And then you're like, I don't know, I stopped counting. Because you went on like micro-calorie counting, and you were like, you had little beads, and you were doing them across. And then it was like 10:30 in the morning, and you were over calories. And you're like, or finances, or whatever, it doesn't matter. So we do these things, and then we just kind of quit. Look, gather yourself together, whatever it is. It could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be something to do with your kids, and just get one little win under your belt. What will this do for you? It will give you hope. Man, I can't do one push-up. Then get on your knees and do a half of a push-up. Are you with me? And it's like, I did one. And you go up on the refrigerator, right? 1/2 push-up. And that's hope. That's hope that tomorrow you might be able to do 2 half push-ups. It's something to spark. Do you remember when in Mark's gospel, particularly in Mark's gospel, when there's the 5,000 people and they've been following Jesus around and he has compassion on them. They've been with him all day. Can you imagine a day with Jesus just teaching and teaching and teaching? And you're like, oh, man. You know? We got to get home, honey. The roast is on. Sir, could you wrap it up? The Lions play at 4. Could you imagine? Just the raptured in his words. There you were. And you ever been so engrossed in something you didn't think to eat? By the way, that's the Chris Cramer diet plan. Do something so you forget about it. That's my only hope. I got no willpower. Don't eat that. Don't eat that. Come to Papa. I have none of that. But if I'm doing something that I love, I forget about eating. That's my only hope. Is anybody with me? Yeah. They're so enraptured in what Jesus is teaching. No one's eaten. And it's been all day. He says, get them something to eat. And they're like, this would take months and months of wages to feed all these people. And he says this, and it's in Mark's gospel, he says this, paraphrase, see what you can scrounge up. Now, let's be honest. You would say, that's a waste of time. Are you with me? If you were honest, I said. You'd say that's a waste of time. We need a real plan. This is really important when I'm talking about your hope. Go see what you can scrounge up. Now you know that he did a miracle and fed them all. You know that now, but you didn't know that then. But if you did know that he fed everybody, you'd say, why bother with the scrounging? Just drop it from heaven. Haven't you read the Old Testament? Are you with me? Just drop it like this. Now he says, go see what you can scrounge up. And they get 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they bring it back. You know what will give you some hope in your life? You do a little scrounging. You see what you can scrounge up. Now, that's not nothing. So I don't have all, 8 years of my college figured out. I don't have all. He says, no, just go see what you can scrounge up. Just get a little something going. Get a little fire started. Do a half a push-up. Start the resume. Get one paragraph done. The power of getting something going to build the hope in your life. That little lunch they brought to Jesus, that was hope. And then he does the rest. You know what you got to do? You got to bring something to God, and he'll do the rest. He'll do the rest. I don't know about what's going to happen in the future. No, but do what you can to help your own hope. Do the things that you can do. And this is such a key thing. Let me add before we close. Surround yourself with hopeful people. It is really hard. It is really hard to maintain hope when you are flooded with people who have no hope. And they're down about everything. They talk that way about everything. And so you're trying to maintain faith and hope. By the way, good on you for showing up here today. Think about it. A bunch of people that have hope. That's a good environment to be in. There's a lot of places that don't project hope. There's a lot of voices. There's a lot of things that you can listen to, that you can watch on the internet that don't project hope. They just project defeat and despair and darkness and gloom. And man, you got to surround yourself with hopeful people. When life is low, you got to put yourself where the voices around you lift you up rather than push you down. Think about it. Moses is given this example in Hebrews chapter 11. It says, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He's stepping out from his old environment. He's going to step into something new. You got to get to hope. Why would you expose yourself to people that are just down and hopeless all of the time? Like, well, Pastor, they're realists. No, they're hopeless. They're not realists. I am not here advocating Pollyanna and that you pretend that there are no challenges in life. Not a bit. Hope is not denying that you're facing difficulty. It is squarely knowing you're facing difficulty, and yet God has something better out in front of me. A little bit of humility will help too. There's an interesting proverb. It's Proverbs 26, I think verse 12, and it says this. If you see a man that's wise in his own eyes, you ever seen somebody that was really smart to themselves? Good times there. Huh? Isn't that a lunch date? Who are you having lunch with today, honey? Mr. Know-It-All. Oh, enjoy. You ever met a person who was wise in their own eyes? It goes on to say this, Proverbs 26, there's more hope for a fool than for him. It's like the pinnacle is when you think you have it all figured out. I already know everything. Let's just shut the door right there. There's nothing else to be added to this equation because I already know. And sometimes the most hopeless people are the people that think they know everything. See, humility is basically saying, I don't know how God's going to work this out. But I know that he will. Now, I'm going to read, and in a minute, we're going to share. I told you I was going to read a Bible verse to you. I just wanted you to want it. You know, if I read at the beginning, sometimes you don't want it. Romans chapter 8. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. You got to do the math. Just do the math. You're sitting there and you're suffering. You got to do the math. Now, here's how a lot of times we do the math very poorly. We do the math like this. I'm suffering. It's so bad. It's so terrible. And anybody ever get your suffering little bonnet going? And you just build it up, how bad it is, and how bad it's going to be, and how much worse it's going to be. Anybody? It's your little suffering thing going. One of the things that we often do is we exaggerate our suffering. And I don't know why we do this. Something about human nature or our psyche, but we make it bigger. Let me ask it to you this way. It's hard to watch a friend suffer, but when you're seeing somebody else go through something, you have a different emotional attachment. I wouldn't say you're detached, because sometimes you're attached a little bit. But it's not the same as the person that's going through it exactly. Do you get what I'm saying? You can be removed and you can look at it and go, no, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. If you compare what you're going through with what God has planned for you, my friends, what kind of God do we serve? A God that can barely get it together? Little Charlie turned 6 this week, and man, you should see the little suffering that she has in her life. Oh, the suffering. I mean, you can imagine. You know what I mean? Like the other day, we're like in tears, and it's because there's a piece of Velcro that the flap on her shoes, they don't stick, and she starts crying. No, I mean, like I want to laugh and go, please. I'm thinking of like Flint-style parenting. I'm trying to come up with a solution here, but all I can say is I think you're exaggerating your suffering. Is it possible that we exaggerate our suffering? Now look, you say, Pastor, don't make my suffering small. I'm not. Some of you suffer more than I ever have and perhaps ever will. And yet I can still say it's nothing compared to what God is coming for you. Anybody here ever take your kids on a trip? No, like you take them on a trip and you got a good destination. Like you're going to Cedar Point, you're going to Disney World, something big. Anybody? Toledo Zoo, I don't know, something. Dunkin' Donuts, take them somewhere. For the love of God, take them. All right, so you go, you're going to take them somewhere. Whatever it is, they encounter suffering along the way. Something didn't go right. You know what I mean? And you're trying to tell them, you're like, you're going to see Mickey Mouse. Is anybody with me? You're going to see Mickey freaking Mouse. I mean, this is going to be... Are you with me? It's going to be colossal. And you're stuck over here because you're in the gas station and they didn't have the kind of gummy worms that... You're like, where we're going, it rains gummy worms. You don't know. They can't conceive. If they've never been, they can't conceive it. This is true. Are you ready for the closer? We're just children. I mean, you don't blame me. You just blame the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians 13. Right now, we think like children and we reason like children because we just can't see it all. But one day, he says, one day we'll see. God has an unbelievable thank you for the yes. Look at him. I said, yeah. He says, we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth. How many know sometimes the more the suffering, the greater the prize that's coming? They say, I don't know, but they say it hurts to have a baby. That's what they say. How many know the prize is worth the pain? The future is worth the frustration. You have hope.